Hey there, cats and kittens, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the MonkeyBoy Presents the DC Comics Superhero Collection by Eaglemoss, and today I'm happy to bring you issue number 110, Grifter. First of all, I have to give a big shout out to all my fans out there for patiently awaiting this episode. I know it's long overdue. Needless to say, life for a while interfered there, work and all those commitments we have, unfortunately, have kept me from using what little free time I have to make these episodes, but I'm so glad y'all have hung in there with me. I hope you really enjoy this one. Let's talk about Grifter here for a minute. He is a very cool character. The figure is just okay. Some of you may know him from his first appearances in Image Comics. He was created by Jim Lee, of course. He has since moved on to the Wildstorm universe and then was incorporated into the current DC universe. You may also know him from his animated appearance on the very short-lived animated series known as WildeC.A.T.s, which was the team that he was affiliated with while he was in the Image and Wildstorm universes for a while. You might also recognize him from the recently released, pretty recently released, animated movie from DC Warner Brothers Animation called Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox, where he appeared in an alternate version of the DC Universe as a member of a group known as the Resistance. This, of course, was based off the comic book series known as Flashpoint, which ultimately resulted in the New 52, for better or for worse. It's what we're stuck with. Anyway, moving on to the figure and the magazine here. Of course, as always, as is tradition, we'll take a look at the magazine, which will tell you everything you need to know about Grifter, the mercenary, also known as Cole Cash, and then we'll take a look at the figure itself, covering the good, the bad, and the ugly. Thanks so much, everybody, for hanging in there with me. I really hope you enjoy this one. He's a cool character, and the figure it's okay. I hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy issue number 110 in the DC Comics Superhero Collection by Eaglemoss, Grifter. First up, the character section. Where we discovered Grifter, also known as Cole Cash, had a very troubled childhood. After his father was murdered mysteriously, his mother remarried a mob boss. Boss Sam Del Graci was an abusive stepfather towards Cole, which eventually led to the boy running away from home. He soon joined up with a local gang and began to rob banks with them. After a number of successful bank heists, Cole and his gang were caught in the act and were surrounded by police. When the gang started taking hostages, Cole's strict code of ethics got the better of him. He had sworn never to hurt an innocent person, and turned on his gang. While awaiting trial, he was approached by a representative from a secret government organization, who was impressed with Cole's abilities. He was given a choice: either spend the rest of his life in prison, or join a covert government operation known as Team 7. When Cole and the rest of Team 7 awoke from their comas, they found they all had some sort of psychic abilities. Some of them also discovered that being exposed to the Gen Factor caused psychological damage. One of the team members committed suicide almost immediately, while others' mental conditions deteriorated slowly over time, causing them to become more and more homicidal. Grifter and the rest of Team 7 also used their psychic abilities to discover that they had been betrayed. Team 7 decided to track down Miles Craven for betraying them, only to find that they had been lured into another trap. Craven had trained nuclear weapons to fall directly on the spot where Team 7 was. Grifter and Team 7 used their powers to join together and create a psychic force field around themselves, protecting them from the nuclear blast. Grifter came out of his semi-retirement to briefly go on 2 more covert missions with members from Team 7. It was while on one of these missions that Grifter would come to possess what is now his signature red mask. Not long after this, he was approached by a woman named Zealot, who convinced him to join up with a new covert team that was codenamed the WildeC.A.T.s. After helping recruit others to the team, the WildeC.A.T.s fought against the invading aliens known as the Demonites. They also ended up fighting against some of Zealot's own people, as a number of the warrior sisters that she had helped train betrayed her principles and became mercenaries for hire. Now flying solo, Grifter returned home and ran a con on his abusive stepfather, mob boss Sam Del Graci. Using an elaborate scheme, Cole Cash got his evil stepdad to admit that he was the one that had ordered the hit on Cole's real father. Grifter recorded the entire thing and turned it over to the DA. With this new evidence, Del Graci was arrested, charged, and sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Cole's father. Grifter would go on to join an organization known as the Halo Corporation, which was now being run by former WildeC.A.T. leader Spartan. Grifter agreed to help Spartan and the Halo Corporation take down a former member of the WildeC.A.T.s who was codenamed Tau. During a mission to take down Tau and his new crime syndicate, Grifter ended up being crippled by a member of a team known as the Atomic Family. Confined to a wheelchair, he was eventually given an android to control. Using a sensory deprivation pod, he could pilot the former hero known as Ladytron. Grifter and the entire Wildstorm universe were then incorporated into the DC universe when the Flash accidentally rebooted time during the Flashpoint crisis. In this Flashpoint universe, Cole Cash is still Grifter, but now he leads a militant resistance group who are fighting against Wonder Woman and her invading Amazonian army. When the Flash attempted to undo the damage he had done to the timeline, he instead merged the universes together into one new reality. In this DC New universe, Cole Cash, also known as Grifter, is now a former con man and ex-member of Delta Force. Next, we look at a couple of Grifter's classic stories. First, we look at WildeC.A.T.s version 3.0, year 1 and 2. And these books collect all 24 issues of Wildstorm's latest series, starting their popular WildeC.A.T.s team. We find Grifter being thrust into the middle of this war between the Halo Corporation and this person who's a former WildeC.A.T. known as Tau and his new crime syndicate. Over the course of the story, Grifter gets more than he bargained for when he goes into combat against a team known as the Nuclear Family, and he is accidentally crippled in the melee. While Grifter is recuperating, he discovers that his long-lost, thought-dead girlfriend Zealot is actually alive and well, and is being held by a band of her own sisters who have turned into mercenaries for hire. Grifter tries to train a successor to mount a rescue, but after this proves to be disastrous, he instead uses a remote-controlled robot known as Ladytron to rush in and save Zealot. It's a nicely illustrated story that has some really clever writing, and if you want to know more about the classic Grifter, when he was still part of the Wildstorm universe, this is a good story to check out. We also look at Grifter Volume 3. And this is the story that reintroduces us to Grifter after DC decided to reboot the DC Universe in the event known as the New 52. We find that he is now a former Delta Force member who was abducted by the evil aliens known as the Daemonites, who are trying to invade the world. He instead gains superpowers, including the ability to see these Daemonites, and after successfully killing a number of them who have assumed human form, he is now being hunted by the military and law enforcement because they believe he is some sort of psychotic killer. Over the course of the story, he meets up with the New 52 version of Zealot and takes the fight to the Daemonites head-on in a very explosive climax that I don't want to ruin for you here. It's well illustrated and a fun story, and is for the most part a pretty interesting reimagining of the character. Grifter's Friends and Foes section features his teammates on both the WildeC.A.T.s and Team 7, the evil leader of the Daemonites, Hellspawn, and his girlfriend and fellow WildeC.A.T. teammate, Zealot. Finally, the iconography section looks at some of the other masked gunslingers in the DCU. It looks at one of the very first masked gunslingers in the Wild Wild West, the Vigilante, as well as his contemporaries, the Trigger Twins. Frustrated District Attorney Jill Carlisle, who purchased haunted Colt 45 handguns that compel her to hunt down and kill evildoers, as the Crimson Avenger. The calculated mercenary known simply as Deadshot. A man named Christopher Smith, who equipped himself with state-of-the-art weaponry to set about enforcing harmony at gunpoint as a rogue U.S. agent called Peacemaker. A group of gun-wielding vigilantes calling themselves the Chain Gang, who originally set out to clean up the streets of their town, but eventually became worse than the criminals they incarcerated. And finally, the hero known as Gunfire, aka Andrew Van Horn, who gained the mutant ability to turn any object he touched into an energy weapon. And here we have Grifter, also known as Coal Cash. And this is, wow, another mixed bag of a figure for me. I know I sound like a broken record probably at this point, but he's another figure that I really like. Another really great character, like Gold, like Mara. I liked Mara, everybody, I really did. I like the character, I just wish my figure was a little bit nicer. Grifter is another one I think that they really could have skipped over and given me any other figure instead of him, because he's the only Wildcat. And while he's a great character and he looks really nice, I just wish that he wasn't the only Wildcat member. At least give me one more. Zealot, Voodoo, Spartan, somebody. But that being said, the figure's pretty nice, especially given the fact that they put him in his most recent outfit, his most current look, with the New 52 and Flashpoint and all of that. I prefer the classic look of Grifter when he was part of Image and Wildstorm and all that, with the green trench coat and the brown pants and the bandoliers across his chest. But the flak jacket is nice. Dual wielding the guns is pretty cool. The mask is perfect. I've always loved Grifter's mask. Another blonde hero, all the way down to the combat cargo pants and the boots and the knee pads. He looks nice. He really does. For what he is, he does look good. And if you're a fan of the character, a fan of the Wildcats, I think you should pick him up. I question why he was included in this line like I have the past couple of figures. But all that being said, I'll talk a little bit more about what I do and don't like in the next section in a moment. Grifter stands atop the classic DC logo, and the underside of his base features his name and serial number. And to give you a sense of size and scale, here he is next to some of the other gun-toting heroes and villains in the DC Eaglemoss collection, and alongside his fellow members of the Resistance from the Flashpoint universe. Grifter is a cool character and an average-looking figure. I think he's only for the most die-hard fan of the Wildcats or this character in particular, or for the completionist who is a collector like me and who likes this Eaglemoss collection. He is not perfect, he's not the Grifter I personally wanted, but that's not to say that he's all bad. So of course we'll start with the good. The sculpt, above anything else, is the best thing about this figure. There are all sorts of great little details all over him, which I'm going to highlight here, of course. The pose is just okay. It's not awful. It's not great. It's just sort of average. Almost feels a little bit redundant, but it's okay. The paint is pretty well done. I like the mask. I like the fact that he's brandishing his weapons. Starting at the bottom, of course, with the base, you can see the boots are fantastically done. They're very militaristic looking combat boots. Every lace is detailed. They look like leather. They look heavy duty. Like the pants, how they're baggy, how they look like military pants, the knee pads, all the straps. Love the fact that both the holsters are on his legs. Again, the straps, the details, buckles, and buttons and everything are really well done. The holsters are empty, of course, because he's brandishing his weapons, and that, of course, leads up into the flak jacket, which is nicely done for what it is. There's great sculpting along the flak jacket. You can see every little bit of detail there, showing how it is sort of armor-plated. I like his arms, great musculature, the flesh tone is nice. The guns both look very, very cool. You can see his fingers on the triggers and every digit around the handles of the guns, and how the hammers are cocked back. There's a great chrome detailing there, which of course leads up to the head sculpt. And the head sculpt is nice for what it is. His face, of course, is totally covered since he wears that mask. It sort of drapes across his face, but it's nicely textured, nicely detailed. It looks like fabric, as though it's just hanging there. The red paint is nice with those black highlights and shading. His hair is blonde and wild. I like how the straps of the mask get lost in that mass of blonde hair. It looks like he's moving because of the way it's textured and detailed. Like the fact that the eyes are pupilless, those black stripes across the eyes, very nicely detailed. It truly gets across the character of Grifter. It feels like Grifter mostly because of that mask, that head sculpt. On to the bad, which I guess you could chalk up to personal preference. I don't like the pose. It feels sort of static, almost redundant. I wish that it looked more like the Grifter on the cover of the magazine, where he's sort of twisting at the waist and his arms are at slightly different angles instead of this straight out, both guns pointing at the same direction sort of take. It just feels boring to me. And also, the costume. I like the classic Grifter, the trench coat and the brown pants, and I don't know, I miss that look. This one's okay, it's just not for me. That's not to say he's a bad figure, it's just not my favorite costume. Finally, the ugly. You really want to watch out for the guns in his hands. They can come bent. I've heard of them breaking. Mine are luckily pretty nice. I think they're okay for the most part, but that is something you definitely want to watch out for. Overall, Grifter is okay. He's a good figure. He's not great, he's not terrible, he's just somewhere in between. I like him because I'm a fan of the character. I liked the WildeC.A.T.s. I grew up with that comic book from Image and Wildstorm. I watched the animated series, and I always dug this character. I was always drawn to him for some reason. And he is very nicely represented, even though I'm not the biggest fan of this costume, this take on the character. It's still neat that he was featured at all, and the WildeC.A.T. characters were sort of given a chance to shine, albeit briefly. He's another one that's sort of a weird character to include, like Jonah Hex and Hitman and Gold. He's definitely not for everyone. He is an obscure character. If you're not familiar with him, skip over him. Save your money. I really think you should. But if you know the WildeC.A.T.s, you like Grifter, pick him up, add him to your collection. Sure, he's not wearing the trench coat, he doesn't look like the classic WildeC.A.T. version with the big crazy guns, but he is still pretty cool. Even though, you know, like I said, he is not flawless. I like it. I do. I really do. And I hope you do too. And I hope you've enjoyed my review of issue number 110 in the DC Comics collection by Eaglemoss here, Grifter, also known as Cold Cash. Thank you all again for your patience with me. I know it's been a little bit overdue, but at least I finally put this review up, and I'm going to try to get back on schedule with the next figure in this collection. It's time once again, ladies and gentlemen, for a special edition, and this was a pair of characters that almost didn't happen, and I really like them. I hope you do too. They, of course, are interdimensional, magical trickster imps who like to torment the world's finest heroes, that of course being Batman and Superman respectively. If you know who I'm talking about, even if you don't know who I'm talking about, I hope you please stay tuned for that quick teaser trailer of a most excellent pair of special edition figures. Until then, as always, I am the Monkey Boy, aka J to his friends. Thank you so much for watching.